Thank you. Okay, what comes to mind when I ask, what makes you, you? Do you think about being a parent, a sibling, or a friend? Do you think about your career? Maybe you think about the activities that you do and how you fill your day. Who we are often includes our relationships, what we do for work, and our hobbies that we enjoy. But there are other parts of our identity as well. Identity includes our emotional and spiritual being, our values, our past experiences, and our hopes and dreams for the future. Identity is complex, and it's hard to encompass everything that we are into a few words. It's become clear to me that having a strong sense of identity is critical when going through the many challenges life throws our way. Self-reflecting on the components that make up my identity has helped me navigate my recent experience with grief. Today, I'm going to share with you all my journey. When it comes to my identity, I'm a Métis woman, a twin, a medical student, and a researcher. For those who don't know, Métis people are one of the 3 Indigenous peoples in Canada, the other 2 being Inuit and First Nations. Sometimes people think Métis are simply a mix of European and First Nations, when in reality, Métis people are their own distinct and unique group. We have our own identity, cultural practices, and values. I'm Métis on my mom's side, and these pictures above show a few of my family members, the baby on the left being my great-grandmother, Veronica. One way that my family expresses our Métis culture is through the value we place on spending time with each other. So every December, my extended family gets together for an early Christmas. Up to 70 people gather, we share food, stories, play games. This was one of my fondest memories growing up, and something that I still look forward to. Another part of my Métis culture is beadwork. I learned that Métis women would often bead floral designs as they symbolized the natural world and our significance to that connection with nature. These are a few of my beadwork pieces, and beading has become a way for me to ground myself and to connect to the spirits of my ancestors. I'm also a sister. This picture shows me and my identical twin, Madeline, with our brother, Sam. Can you guess which one's me? Maddie and I were inseparable from the start. We did everything together. When we were little, my mom would dress us up in matching outfits, and everyone would mix us up. But this wasn't something that annoyed us. Instead, we thought it was funny, like we had a special secret between the 2 of us. In high school, we continued to be inseparable. We played the same sports, sat with each other at lunch, studied together at night. Even when she chose to move away for her undergrad, we were still in constant communication. We'd FaceTime multiple times a day and tell each other everything. When we were little, we were very similar, and we shared many of the same hobbies. But as we grew up, we developed our own distinct interests. Madeline was passionate about politics and travel, and I was a nerd, so I was mostly interested in school. We continued to share interests, and we did things together like run half marathons, but we also had our own unique identities. I never felt that too much of my identity was tied to being a twin, which might be something that other twins experience. I always felt like my own unique person while also being a part of this special duo. People often ask me, what's it like to be a twin? It's hard to describe. I don't know what it's like not to be a twin. But my answer usually encompasses an enthusiastic, it's the best thing ever. It's more than having a best friend or a sister. It's having someone who's going to be there for you no matter what, through everything and anything. Yes, we fight, as most siblings do, and we were sometimes competitive with each other, but for the most part, we were raised to support one another, to lift each other up, and any success and happiness that one of us had, we wanted the other one to have as well. Another part of my identity is my love of research and science. This curiosity led me to research at a young age. And in the summer of grade 11, I received a scholarship to work with a researcher at the University of Calgary. This was my jumping off point that ignited my passion for research. I went on to complete an honors research project during my undergraduate degree, and then I moved here to Saskatoon to pursue a Master of Public Health degree. During my master's, I completed a research project looking at Métis culture within addiction treatment programming. The result of that research is a framework titled Journey of a Seed. The Journey of a Seed framework outlines Métis values, which include history, kinship, culture, and identity. The framework is also a metaphor for growth and development. It describes the journey a seed takes to flourish and find its identity, and how these themes influence its growth along the way. The research was done in consultation with Métis community members in Saskatoon. Focus groups were held with Métis elders and knowledge keepers, and individual interviews were conducted with counselors at a Métis treatment center. My research question explored what elements of Métis culture were currently being included in addiction programming, and how could Métis values be further integrated into the programming. So the first theme of the framework is history. History includes knowing who you are and where you come from. History is represented by the seed and the soil. This portrays how intimately connected history is to our identity, how it offers that foundation of who we are and significantly influences who we will become. The elders emphasized how important it is for Métis people going through addiction treatment to know their history, which includes their individual history of their family and their ancestors, but also the collective history of the Métis people. The second theme is kinship. From a Métis perspective, kinship refers to the profound and interconnected relationship between individuals, communities, and the natural world. It goes beyond biological and familial relationships. Rather, it encompasses a broader sense of connection to the land, animals, plants, and the elements. Kinship is represented as the roots, so that initial growth of the plant. Kinship also includes the seed and the soil, recognizing that importance of history and its influence on kinship. The roots are the anchor of the plant, its connection to the earth, much like our kinship networks are our anchor points to the world. The third theme of the framework is culture. Culture refers to the activities and values of a group. For the Métis people, culture can include beadwork, wearing the traditional sash, the Red River jig, fiddle music, and many more. Culture is represented with the natural elements of the sun, the clouds, the rain, the wind. You also see further growth of the plant. This growth is because of the supportive environment or the culture of the seed. The fourth theme of the framework is identity. But rather than thinking of it as a fourth and distinct theme, I'd like you to think of it as the three previous themes supporting the development of identity. The elders and knowledge keepers emphasize the importance of connecting to one's identity, that fire and spirit within a person. That ultimately, a strong sense of identity will help guide community members through their healing journey. As I mentioned before, this framework was developed during my master's, which I finished right before starting my degree in medicine in August of 2021. While the framework was developed in the context of addiction programming, it was intended to be used as a resource to guide the development of Métis-specific programming. I've come to understand that it's applicable to many more contexts. What I didn't realize during my master's when I was developing this framework was that one day I would face a life-changing identity crisis with the loss of my sister in October 2021, nearly 2.5 years ago. At this time, I was a few months into medical school. I was incredibly busy trying to figure out this new learning environment, making new friends, keeping up with the demands of schoolwork and extracurriculars. The loss of Madeline was unexpected and sudden. It completely devastated me, shattering my identity. My roots were ripped from the soil, and the reality of my entire life shifted. I didn't know who I was without my twin. I didn't know how to make sense of the world without her and her support. I'd like to note that I'm not an expert on grief, and I'm still very much trying to navigate through my own journey of grief. After spending a few weeks at home following the loss of Maddie, I decided to go back to school. Looking back, I realized I had no business being at school at that time, but school was all I knew. I had reverted to my history and what was familiar to me. The best way I can describe it was being in survival mode. Those first 6 months were a blur as I tried to keep up with school and navigate this loss. Ultimately, I didn't pass some of my exams, and I was faced with my first major decision without Madeline. Do I push ahead and remediate, Or do I take a step back, give myself some much-needed time to grieve and reflect, and repeat the year? I chose the latter, which was tough for many reasons. One being that so much of my identity was tied to being a successful student. And on top of that, I didn't have my normal coping mechanism of Madeline to lean on for support. I believe taking a step back and repeating the year showed resilience and taught me a very important lesson of how to handle failure. Although it hasn't been a typical path through medical school, I think it will result in the best outcome for me as a physician and for my future patients. So I picked myself up. I relied on my values, my curiosity, my love of medicine, and I approached this new school year with humility and a newfound ability of being able to ask for support, advocating for myself, and trusting myself in what I needed. People sometimes ask me, how did you do it? How do you do it? The honest answer, I have no idea. And it seems impossible that I have. But I realize that my strength and resiliency is because of my strong roots and sense of who I am. I know who I am. I have a good understanding of where I come from, the people and values that I encompass in my daily life. Losing Madeline has been nothing but challenging. And while I don't believe it's made me a better person, I believe it's made me a different person. Someone who has had to adapt and face the reality of a devastating loss. Someone who has dealt with failure and difficult decisions. Someone who better understands the complexity and the preciousness of life. I started to see how applicable this framework was for my own healing journey, and that I needed to remember my history, to be supported by my kinship, live through my values, and participate in my culture. My seed and the soil I grow in has changed since losing Maddie. The sad reality is that Madeline is now a part of my past. She's joined the spirits of my grandparents and my ancestors. And my new identity, the plant that I will grow into, will reflect her and who I was when she was here. Through my journey, I've relied upon my kinship and community, and I've come to recognize how important it is to have a support system you can count on. My relationship with Maddie ultimately taught me this. She was incredibly loyal, and while she had perfected the ability to show up for people, she also demanded that they show up for her too. I spoke about how culture is represented by the wind, the sun, the clouds, and the rain. While this is still true, I've adapted it slightly. For me, Madeline is the wind. She's pushing me forward, encouraging me along the way. She continues to influence my culture and the activities I do. I've become much more adventurous, which I know she loves. So when I think about the future, the person and the physician I want to be, two main things come to mind. The first being the importance of being empathetic and understanding, recognizing that everyone has gone through challenges and had to navigate their own healing journey, whether that be grief, addiction, or another challenge. The second being the value of having a holistic view of health and wellness, that although medicine teaches us to look at the physical aspects of someone, their identity extends beyond their illness. So I started this talk with discussing how complex identity is. But equally complex is that loss of identity. Regardless of your specific experience of loss, at some point we must all go through it. And I hope this framework can offer some guidance on how to begin that scary and challenging journey of finding your new identity. Thank you.